Margaret Henderson had spent 42 years building a life with her son David and his wife, Rachel. At 71, she lived in the small guest house behind their suburban home in Charleston, an arrangement that had seemed perfect until recently. Margaret was a retired schoolteacher, her grey hair always neatly styled, her posture still proud despite the years. She had raised David alone after his father passed when the boy was only 12. They had been close, or so she thought, until Rachel entered the picture 5 years ago. Rachel was younger, ambitious, always dressed impeccably. She worked in marketing and made sure everyone knew about her success. David, a gentle accountant with kind eyes and his father's quiet demeanor, seemed happy. That was all Margaret had ever wanted. But lately, things had shifted. As he started with small comments. "David, your mother is so old-fashioned," Rachel would say with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. Then came the bigger slights. When Margaret offered to help with dinner, Rachel would wave her away. "We've got it handled. Why don't you rest in your cottage?" The cottage, that's what Rachel called it now, though it was just a converted garage. Margaret said nothing. She had learned patience in her 7 decades. She watched, she listened, and she waited. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in October. Margaret had walked to the main house to drop off some fresh tomatoes from her small garden. She heard voices in the kitchen, raised and careless. They didn't know she was there. "That old lady is good for nothing but paying our bills." Rachel's voice cut through the air like glass. "Honestly, David, she just sits there collecting her pension while we work our fingers to the bone." Margaret's hand froze on the doorknob. David's response was softer, but she heard it. He laughed. Actually laughed. "Let's help out." "A lot with the expenses," he said weakly. "Help out. She should be covering everything. We let her live here, don't we?" Margaret backed away silently, the tomatoes still in her basket. She walked back to her cottage, closed the door, and sat in her favorite chair by the window. She didn't cry. She had cried enough tears in her life. Instead, she thought Margaret had always been generous. Her teacher's pension wasn't large, but she had saved carefully. For the past 5 years, she had been paying nearly all the household utilities, the property tax, the insurance. She bought groceries weekly. She had even helped David and Rachel with the down payment on their new car last year, and this was how they saw her. A burden, an ATM machine with grey hair. That night, Margaret made some phone calls. First to her bank, then to her nephew Thomas, a lawyer in Atlanta, then to her old friend Dorothy, who managed a lovely senior living community across town. The next morning, Margaret went about her routine as usual. She made her tea, tended her small garden, read her book. She stayed quiet. By afternoon, David called her, his voice tight with panic. "Mom, something's wrong with the cards. All the credit cards are declined. The bank account, it's..." "Mom, what's happening?" Margaret walked slowly to the main house. David met her at the door, his face pale. Rachel stood behind him, arms crossed, her expression already accusing. "I'm not sure what you mean, dear," Margaret said calmly. "The accounts. Everything's blocked. We can't access anything. We tried to pay for lunch and the card was declined." People were laughing at us. "Mom, what's going on?" Margaret looked at her son, this man she had raised, who had once been so kind, so thoughtful. When had he changed? Or had she simply not wanted to see it? "Oh," she said softly. "Well, I suppose that would be because I closed all the joint accounts this morning, and I stopped automatic payments for the utilities, insurance, and property tax." The silence was deafening. Rachel found her voice first. "You what? You can't do that." "Actually, I can. They were my accounts. My money." Margaret's voice remained steady, gentle, even. "I realized last night that I've been..." "What was it you said, Rachel?" "Good for nothing but paying bills?" David's face went from pale to red. "Mom, you heard that." We didn't mean..." "You laughed, David." Margaret's eyes filled with tears now, but her voice didn't waver. "When she said I was good for nothing, you laughed, Mrs. Henderson. You're being ridiculous." Rachel snapped. "We let you live here, in the converted garage of the house I helped you buy, using the utilities I paid for, eating the food I purchased." Margaret shook her head slowly. "I think I've been more than fair." She reached into her pocket and pulled out an envelope. "My lawyer drew these up this morning. I'm moving to Heritage Garden Senior Community. Dorothy has a lovely apartment ready for me. This envelope contains a check for my portion of this month's expenses. After that, you're on your own." David's eyes widened. "Mom, please. We're sorry." We'll do better. Don't leave. Do you know what hurts most, David? Margaret's voice finally cracked. Not Rachel's words, but that you didn't defend me. Your father would be so disappointed. The mention of his father hit David like a physical blow. Margaret could see it in his eyes. I raised you to be kind. She continued, to value people, not what they could give you. Somewhere along the way, you forgot that. Rachel's phone rang. She answered it, her face growing darker. What do you mean the property tax is due? We can't. Yes, I understand there's a penalty. She hung up and glared at Margaret. This is financial abuse. No, dear, Margaret said quietly. It's called financial independence. I'm simply stopping my contributions. You're both adults with good jobs. You'll figure it out over the next week. Margaret moved her things to Heritage Gardens. It was a beautiful place, full of light and laughter. She made new friends, joined a book club, started volunteering at the community library. David came to visit on Sunday, alone. He stood in the doorway of her new apartment, looking lost. It's nice here, he said quietly. It is. Margaret poured them both tea. Sit down, son. They sat in silence for a moment. Finally, David spoke. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened to me. Rachel, No, that's not fair. I made my own choices. Yes, you did. The bills are overwhelming. The property tax alone. We never realized how much you were covering. I didn't do it for gratitude, Margaret said. I did it because I love you. But love shouldn't mean being treated with disrespect. David's eyes were wet. Dad would hate me right now. Your father would want you to learn from this. Margaret reached across and took his hand. I'm not cutting you out of my life, David, but I won't be taken advantage of anymore. I have my own life to live, however many years I have left. Can I earn back your trust? Margaret smiled sadly. Time will tell, but it starts with how you treat people when you think no one's watching. Rachel filed for divorce 3 months later. The financial pressure had been too much, and David, facing reality for the first time in years, had started questioning their relationship. He discovered she had been having an affair with a colleague, someone with more money and status. David sold the house and moved to a modest apartment. He visited Margaret every Sunday and slowly, painfully, began rebuilding the man he used to be. One evening, a year later, they sat together on the porch of Margaret's apartment, watching the sunset. I learned something, Mom, David said. When Rachel left, I realized she never loved me. She loved what I could provide, or what she thought you could provide through me. And what did you learn from that? That the people who love you don't count the cost. They just love you. He paused. The way you always loved me, even when I didn't deserve it. Margaret patted his hand. You always deserved love, David. You just forgot how to give it back for a while. I'm trying to be better. The man Dad would be proud of. I know you are, son. I see it. They sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned gold, then pink, then purple. Margaret thought about all the years behind her, all the lessons learned. She thought about kindness and cruelty, about the price of disrespect and the value of dignity. She had been mocked and dismissed, treated as nothing more than a checkbook. But she had taught the most important lesson of all, that every person, no matter their age, deserves respect. And that love without respect isn't love at all. Mom, David's voice was soft. Thank you. For what, dear? For not giving up on me. Even when I gave you every reason to. Margaret smiled and squeezed his hand. That's what mothers do, son. We teach, we guide, and when necessary, we show you the consequences of your choices. But we never stop loving you. The sunset faded into twilight, and in that gentle darkness, both of them found a small measure of peace. Sometimes the greatest act of love is teaching someone to value what they've taken for granted. And sometimes the strongest revenge is simply living well, with dignity intact and head held high. Margaret Henderson had learned that lesson long ago. Now, finally, her son was learning it too.